Welcome to Creativity Signals Atlas. What we're doing here is mapping a force that most of us completely misunderstand when it comes to creativity. It's not about talent, it's not about inspiration. It's this quiet, invisible filter that decides which of your ideas get to live and which ones die before they ever even see the light of day.
And this is the core signal. This is the critical distinction we need to make. See, most of us think of fear as this big wall we have to summon the courage to break through. But the reality? It's way more subtle than that. Fear is a subconscious gatekeeper. It actually shapes what you're even allowed to think about in the first place.
So to really understand this signal, we have to look for its pattern. We're going to track its cognitive footprint across a few different high-stakes environments. And what you'll see is that it's the exact same force at play. It just wears a different mask depending on the context. This right here, this reframes everything. Fear isn't just a feeling, right? It's a cognitive event. When your brain senses the risk of being judged or of failing, it triggers what we call a cognitive collapse. Your mental aperture literally narrows. The goal instantly shifts from exploring what's possible to just avoiding a mistake. Okay, so let's see how this cognitive collapse actually plays out in the real world. Think about the immense pressure of the tech startup scene. So when you're under that constant pressure to get funding and just not fail, a founder's thinking naturally constricts. Instead of exploring genuinely new markets, ideas start to cluster around business models that are already proven to work. The big question changes from what's the most groundbreaking thing we could possibly build to what's the most defensible idea we can pitch. See? The system pre-selects for safety long before anyone writes a single line of code. And you know what? We see this exact same pattern repeating itself in the creative industries. Let's take a look at film and media. In this world, the big scary risk is commercial failure and, audience rejection. The results? You guessed it, cognitive collapse. Writers and producers start gravitating towards proven formulas. Studios greenlight sequels and reboots because, hey, they've got a built-in audience, which lowers the risk. And those unconventional stories, the truly original ideas, they get filtered out because their performance is just too unpredictable. Originality ends up being a liability, not an asset. All right, so we've seen the pattern, we've seen the what. Now let's go a layer deeper and look at the mechanism. How does this filtering system actually operate on a cognitive level? Think of your brain as having two primary modes, two different gears. You've got exploration mode. This is where you're generative, you're playful, it's where originality is born. Then you've got evaluation mode. This mode is critical, it's analytical, and it's totally focused on survival. It's always asking, is this safe? Is this viable? The problem is, fear traps you in a constant state of evaluation, and it completely suffocates exploration before it even has a chance to start. And this table really shows that direct link between your environment and your mind. A public deadline, for instance, doesn't just add pressure, it actively triggers error avoidance. Constantly staring at metrics, that forces convergent thinking. Comparing yourself to your peers, well, that encourages mimicry, not originality. And the risk to your reputation, that suppresses novelty. The system that you're in is constantly shaping your internal cognitive state, whether you realize it or not. And here's the kicker. This filtering, it's not a conscious choice. It's not like you sit down and decide, okay, I'm going to reject my 5 most original ideas today. It happens automatically. It happens subconsciously. Those ideas that just feel a little too risky, a little too exposed, they get deprioritized before you're even fully aware you had them. The consequence of all this is, well, it's profound. This isn't just about one person's creative block. What we're really talking about is a massive, collective loss of potential innovation. We're essentially looking at a vast, unseen graveyard of ideas. Just think about this ratio for a second. For every one idea that actually gets expressed in an unsafe environment, how many were filtered out by the creator's own brain just to avoid risk? 1,000? 1,000,000? The scale of that lost potential is absolutely staggering. And this is the true cost. It's not just about your personal frustration. It's about talented creators who stall out, who genuinely believe they've run out of ideas, when in reality, their environment is just suppressing them. It's smart solutions to really hard problems that never get explored because they seem too radical. It's a culture that gets fed a constant diet of slightly different versions of the same thing. So the diagnosis here is this. Your ideas don't fail because they're bad. They fail because you, the creator, misunderstand the invisible system that filters, judges, and ultimately selects which of your ideas gets to survive. So, how do elite creators navigate this? Well, they don't try to be more courageous. They don't just fight the fear. No. Instead, they become architects of their own environment. They actively engineer psychological safety. So let's be really clear about what we mean by play here. This isn't about being silly or not taking things seriously. In this context, play is a very specific cognitive state where your brain perceives that the consequences of failure are low. And that perception of safety, that's the key. That's what unlocks exploration mode and allows for that novel recombination of ideas, which is the very heart of creativity. This is their mental orientation. This is their playbook. First, they build a firewall between creation and evaluation. Second, they treat their early ideas as cheap, disposable experiments, completely separate from their ego or self-worth. Third, they define the conditions for safe failure. And fourth, and this is so crucial, they control who gets to watch during those fragile early stages. They build a sanctuary for play. Okay, now let's turn this lens on you. The takeaway here isn't a list of tips. It's a framework for analysis. It's time to do an audit of your own creative systems. Seriously, think about it. Where in your process do you feel the most watched? Is it during brainstorming? When you're writing a first draft? Maybe when you're looking at the analytics? Pinpoint that moment of surveillance, because that's where cognitive collapse is happening. This question gets right to the heart of that subconscious filter. What are the thoughts you just dismiss before they even fully form? You know the ones. The ideas that feel too weird, maybe too ambitious, or just too vulnerable. Those are the ideas that are ending up in the graveyard. And finally, the most important question of all. When was the last time you were in a state of low-consequence exploration? Where is that space for you? If you can't answer that question easily, you've just found the source of your bottleneck. And engineering that space, well, that's where the real work begins.